All right. Well, Brooke, thank you so much for joining me for this. So you are the author of a new book, Huddle, How Women Unlock Their Collective Power.
Yes.
I'm so excited to chat with you. I'm a longtime fan. I'm a total CNN junkie.
Yes, we love
So
that.
I
Thank
feel
you.
like you have I have celebrated every New Year's with you for several years.
Oh boy.
And
Oh boy. So fun.
my favorite. You and Dawn are just my favorite every year. Like,
I mean, you should see. I mean, you should see. Maybe it's a good thing the cameras stop rolling. Like we finish television, especially all those years, like 8 years we were in New Orleans. And then we would just go hit, a gay bar in town. Don and his partner would lead the way. My now husband and I, and we would like close that place out at 4 o'clock.
I believe it.
I don't know who we thought we were, but yeah.
It's so, well, you know what? You got to let loose when you can.
Life's short, man. Life is short.
You have a serious job. You got to let loose. Although I did kind of love, I mean, I know this year was different and probably not as fun, but I did kind of love the pajama party.
I was like, guys, is there a way any other New Year's Eve, to be able to just rock some silk PJs, have a little champers and just stay put? I will say, like, if I've taken anything from COVID, it's like, I'm never wearing high heels again. Dude. I am only living in leggings and sweats and I am my best self. And I'm proud of that.
Real talk. What are you wearing on the bottom right now?
Jeans, hiking boots.
Okay.
I mean, most days it's like when I'm doing TV, because we're basically now in a broom closet, AKA a flash studio. And I'm sitting there with like looking professional, top up. I call it like the business wardrobe mullet.
Yeah.
So it's, professional on the top. Even like I will throw on a dress on the days I'm not like shaving. Yeah. And I will have jeans on and a dress on top. And I'm not the only anchor that does this, by the way.
No.
Just like, and with clogs or sneakers.
I don't know if I'll ever go back to jeans. Like I'm in elastic waist pants on the
Yeah. Yeah. I'm okay with jeans. I'm okay with a zipper, but I'm drawing the line at anything with a heel. Forget it.
So funny.
When's the last time you wore heels?
Never. March 13th, 2020.
Exactly.
Really? I don't think I've worn heels in this pandemic at all.
Yeah.
I mean, where am I going? Nowhere.
Wow. Free the feet, man.
Okay. So this is your first book.
Yes.
How did you find the experience of writing a book?
It was like a whole other job, right? So I did my day job, which, the news cycle was insane, and
nothing happening.
Yeah, I mean,
during that
super
period.
slow during the last 2 years. So I had a lot of time. No, but I was very intentional about carving out this time, and it only made me better. It made me show up more present as myself, having interviewed all these trailblazing women, and asking more for what I want in my day job. And I hope readers take that, from the pages.
Totally. Well, I really loved, I'm a research nerd too. And I just loved the journalistic eye that you brought to a really personal book. I mean, it's part memoir, part research. And I would imagine with your life experience, as you're thinking about like, okay, I'm going to write my first book, there's probably so many ideas that you had, like, what am I going to narrow in on?
Yeah.
And I'm curious what led you to narrow in on this kind of collective, cooperative female empowerment.
Totally. I think I knew from the get that I wanted the book to be about women. Yeah. I truly believe, like, outside of, representation and power and access, that women are one another's best asset, best resource. I really, really have always believed that. And so I think, the biggest compliment anyone could ever give me is being a woman's woman. But what did I do in my, early 20s? I went and landed a job in an industry where I am surrounded by a lot of dudes. Yeah. The most paid and just higher in like anchors are men mostly.
Yeah.
My bosses are men. My executive producer, the co-pilot of my show for a decade, a man. And what do I do and sit on TV and talk about? For the most part, our nation's most powerful men. All right. Yeah. So cut to, I'm covering the 2015, 2016 presidential election. I'm crisscrossing the country, rallies, presidential debates. And my journalistic spidey sense is like, boop, 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 boop. What's going on with all these women showing up? Yeah. Really with a really just showing up and caring about what's happening in the country, and not just because, they were hoping for the glass ceiling to be shattered, but for a multitude of reasons. A lot of women showed up for Trump. A lot of women showed up for Bernie. And so cut to the Women's March. I'm in Washington, have my journalist hat on, covering the thousands of women who show up in their pink hats, the day after the inauguration. And I had a moment, Kristen, where I was like, holy shit, if I may, if I weren't there covering the Women's March as a journalist, would I have a group of women who I would show up with and protest with? And the answer was I didn't. I have had extraordinary singular women in my life for years, but I got into a career that was very lonely in my 20s. So I was like in random cities alone. And that was an aha moment for me. It was I need to understand what's happening with women in this country / I need to find a huddle. As I was standing there really in the middle of this giant huddle. And then the last thing I'll say is, through the course of writing this book, I talked to a number of women history scholars who just really educated me on the rich history of huddling among women in America, particularly among, Black women. And we talk about, how women showed up in Congress back in the 1950s and were lobbying for, against crime or for civil rights or education. And of course, had their role in voting rights acts. And then to today, you look at the, Indigenous women fighting in the climate justice movement, Black Lives Matter, founded by 3 Black women, to just Moms Demand Action, which is the largest grassroots huddle in this country. I just believe that huddles weren't being covered enough in our history. And I want to change that.
I love that. I love that so much. And it resonates so much with me personally, because I had a similar moment where I realized I didn't have that squad. I didn't have that huddle.
How old were you?
I was 35 and a new mom.
Yep.
And I imagined when I went into motherhood that I would have that community, right?
Yep.
But circumstances in my life, a job change, a move, some shifting politics and, friendships lost. And
it gets away from you.
Alone. I was alone. And I ended up, and I've talked about this in the podcast before, but I ended up kind of almost creating a community with a couple other women by just being really vulnerable and awkward and asking them out.
Yes.
And
that's exactly how you have to be.
You have to, because it doesn't always come naturally. I think that there are natural places where women huddle, and you find it. I was a theater major in college, and that just naturally, we would all, be friends and be around each other.
Yeah.
But when you're in an isolated career, or I'm a writer, so I'm just sitting at home all day.
Yes.
And so I reached out to about 12 women, and about 6 of them said, I'm good.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Listen, not all women are huddle-tastic. Not all women are in it to win it. And it's important to recognize that and move on. Next,
or they
please.
Already had their thing. But the funny thing is the 5 women that responded are my very best friends now. We're all writers. We call each other cheerleaders and ass kickers, because we will, we will cheer each other on, but we will also call each other shit.
Yep.
We have written each other's book outlines. We have, and it's just been it's just been such a beautiful thing. And so I just resonate so much with your book. But it was something that was really missing in my life, and I had to create it. And I know that you've had that experience too.
I think that's totally normal. And I lay it out, as you said, my book is, I'd say 80% journalism, it's 20% memoir. And I come from, when I think back to girlhood, I was doing all the ballet, tap and jazz, gymnastics, soccer, swimming, did all the things, was surrounded by girls, love being around girls. But then, you cut to your later years, things get away from you, life, babies, husband, wife, whatever it is. And you suddenly wake up one day and you're like, as I explain very vulnerably in this one section of the book. And I'm like, wait, why am I turning to my mother in my 30s where are my girlfriends? And it really made me stand at attention. And I did not get my group of girlfriends together in one room until I was 38.
Yeah.
38. And through the course of this book, I explain like sometimes people have huddles under their noses and you just have to activate them, and you have to put yourself out there, and you have to be vulnerable, and you have to ask.
Yeah. And it's
good on you.
I think we have this idea that like our friendships will just come organically.
Nope.
And they don't. I don't think they do. I think that sometimes you just have to like put yourself out there, and in the same way that anything that we want in life, any goal that we have for ourselves, we're going to say, I'm going to make a list. I'm going to try these things. I'm going to try and fail. I don't think we apply that to friendships, which is unfortunate, or even relationships with other women. I think, we want it to just like float up and happen.
Yeah, Emma Nattuso and Friedman write all about this in the book that came out this past year called Big Friendship. And they treat their friendship like a marriage.
Yeah.
Like they went to therapy to fix their friendship. And we just have to be so intentional. I think especially as we get older and we get, quote, busier, we have to be so careful about just nurturing those friendships through everything. And especially in a pandemic, which is forcing us to be physically apart, you have to be even more intentional about that.
It's hard. Okay. I want to have you read a little section of your book, if that's okay with you.
Drum roll. Okay. I'm going to
show the cover too. I read mine on Kindle, so I haven't seen the cover.
Here we go. This was shot by Mary Ellen Matthews in COVID, in the pandemic, safe, socially distanced book cover. It was just so wild that we were able to pull that off. I wanted a woman to shoot it. Okay. So I'm going to read for you. This is actually the beginning of the epilogue. Writing this book has changed my life. Even as I type these words, I have a sneaking suspicion there are more changes to come. Learning to huddle has made me a better advocate for myself and my fellow sisters. It has encouraged me to use my platform to amplify more women. It has sharpened my senses to hear the voices of women, to really see their struggles and victories. It has made me a better student of the history of female contributions in America and beyond. It has made me a more supportive and collaborative colleague, and it has made me a more present, vulnerable, and supportive friend. When I started this journey, traveling around the country, interviewing these powerful huddles of women, I thought it would be a pretty straightforward process. Book a plane ticket, do the interview, write the chapter, on to the next. What I didn't realize was how much this would differ from my day job, how often the line between journalist and subject would blur. In each of these interviews, whether they realized it or not, these women were holding up a mirror to me. As they were speaking about their own plight, my inner voice started to whisper to me. Sometimes the interview would end and I'd turn off the tape recorder only to experience my interviewees turning the tables on me. They'd ask me questions about my life, my career, my voice, my huddle. The very first interview I did for this book with the judges in Houston cracked me wide open. The armor I often wore at my job, the one that allowed me to cover so much death, destruction, and political division, had to come off. Even before I met the judges that day in Houston, I realized in the airport that this would be the first time in my career that I would jump in headfirst to follow a story that wasn't for my employer. And the nearly 3-hour conversation I had with those judges that day was so different from any 5-minute live interview on my show. I got to dive into the deep end with them. Not to mention, those judges challenged me to believe in myself and this project. They brought me into their huddle, and I left feeling the spirit of something bigger. As a woman, I saw that I had access to this incredible resource, and it felt more important than ever to tell the story of this powerful phenomenon and share the lessons I was learning with women around the world. Slowly over the months that I sat with so many women, I started coming more into my own, at work, at home, in my huddles. The process almost felt like osmosis. By surrounding myself with so many huddle-tastic women, I slowly began to evolve into a stronger version of myself. For example, things that had bothered me pre-huddle, a coworker, a cause, a complaint, could no longer lie dormant within me. I had to take action, and I knew I had a network of women who would take action with me, or at least help light my way.
I love it.
Thank you.
Did you have any idea when you started this book how much inner change would happen for you?
No idea. I mean, I've been a journalist for 21 years, and you get out, you tell the story, you interview. I mean, I have interviewed the most interesting, extraordinary people, ordinary Americans in extraordinary situations, famous people, you name it. But there was something about this journey of interviewing these various women. Like I say, it was like osmosis. It really stirred something deep within me. And I felt so just in alignment with why I'm here.
Yeah.
And what I'm supposed to do. And if I can share that feeling with one woman who's reading this book, man, I've done my job.
Yeah. I love it. One of the things that you mentioned in the book is the fact that as you're interviewing people, you're realizing that this concept of huddling in communities of color is much more normalized. It's happening. And I'm curious because I found that to be true in my own life as well. It seems like white women have been acculturated a little bit more in isolation.
Yeah.
Like this is not as natural for us. It's a revelation for us, where I think many communities of color are like,
we've been doing this
right
for centuries.
Totally.
Why are you writing a book on this?
Yeah. Why do you think that is?
Such a great question. And that's why I really dove in and early in this book, talked to my first huddle on this journey. And I put it at the beginning of the book with the Black judges in Houston.
Yeah.
Let me back up and check my white privilege right here and right now. And what I am about to say is only through my lens, coming from, a white woman born and raised in suburban Atlanta. But I will say that two things. One, on Black women, they do have quite a rich history of huddling, which actually predates slavery, right? A lot of the women I talked to said, obviously, out of necessity, like we were all we had, is what one of the Black judges said to me. But then I talked to Morgan Dixon, who helped found Girl Trek, and she said to me, "No, Brooke, it came before slavery, because of just a shared love and desire to huddle." You think about, what Black women have done for years, raising households, fighting for civil rights act in the 60s, to the Million Woman March in the late 90s, which was in Philadelphia, which brought about, and was totally grassroots organized, right, to better Black communities in America. Same number of people that showed up to the Women's March in 2017, but that was 10 years prior. And you look at Black women today. I mean, I talked to Stacey Abrams. You see what she and other Black women have done with regard to the state of Georgia, flipping it blue for the first time since 1992. And as she shared with me, she's so selfless. I mean, she is a woman who subscribes to the belief of sharing the wealth. Yeah. And after she was minority leader in the state house, for years and years, she got really good at fundraising. And so she got to the point where you got to share the resources. And so she did that with a number of other Black women in Georgia who had the same passion for fighting voter suppression and for flipping the state. And look what they did, right? Yeah. Look what they did. You look at the 3 Black women who founded Black Lives Matter. This is, you look at Black sororities, you look at links, you look at just various organizations through the years. And so it's been strong.
Yeah.
On the flip side, I talked to this women's studies professor at Duke, Kristen, who talked to me about white women. Because I'm like, am I crazy that I'm just really picking up on this as I've been covering the 2015, 2016, election, and I'm noticing all these women show up? And it turns out I was onto something. She described to me there had been this huddle drought in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s. So when you think back to culture tells us, all right, Betty Crocker and June Cleaver were taking care of the home in the 1950s. But actually, it turns out they were like hopping the white picket fences and showing up at, women voter leagues groups and showing up at Congress and testifying, and then, ultimately activists and protesting and bra burning. But then they went to work. And then it got quiet. And so for essentially my entire lifetime, I was born in 1979, there's been this huddle drought among white women until this last decade. And now you're seeing so many white women show the F up.
Yeah. And it's interesting to me just culturally. I mean, my background is in psych, just thinking about the differences in collectivist versus individualist societies, and America is very individualistic. And we've got this, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, every man for himself. And I think that has been ingrained in us, at a kind of cellular level. And I think even in the pandemic, we're seeing how that plays out, how some people feel like, okay, there's a social contract and caring for each other in this pandemic, where others are like, yeah, figure it out for yourself. I'm going to do me, I'm free.
Yeah.
And I do think that a lot of us are seeing the real inherent problems in this individualistic society that we've lived in for so long, that we've been steeped in. And we're starting to look around outside of American culture and go, maybe this collectivism is something that we should be looking into.
I don't know if it was this huddle ethos that if you can't tell, it's like my practice, it's my religion. But through this pandemic, which really started with, having COVID, that first month that we were all kind of locked up, through now nearly a year, I don't know about you, but this has I have never wanted to connect with people more than when I cannot connect.
Totally.
And so I think, if anything, this time has taught me how important it is to link arms with one another. And also, right now, get creative and work out ways to still be in touch with people like we are on Zoom or over FaceTime, and make plans for the future. Because to me, connection, especially as I was sitting in my sick bed, like, connection has never been more important.
Yeah. I completely agree. I completely agree. I mean, it's funny just thinking back to, like, a year and a half ago, and just the things I would say no to. Like, why would I have ever said no to a girls' night? What did I have that was so important that I couldn't show up for a girls' night? Like, I would die for a girls' night right now.
I know. Dying to see my girlfriends.
Totally. Yeah. Why would I say no to that? I'm curious about this too. You are in a male-dominated industry.
Yeah.
And I would imagine that there can be a temptation for female anchors, female journalists, to feel like each other's competition, because ultimately, in some ways you are.
Yeah.
And sure. That's true in my world as well. I have a lot of other writer friends, blogger friends, and at the end of the day, we're kind of, we are each other's competition in a weird way. How have you fought that? How have you navigated that, so that you are making space at the table as opposed to elbowing each other out?
I am going to borrow a line from my friend Ava DuVernay and say, I don't want to be at the party alone.
Yeah.
When I was interviewing her, I'll come back to me in a second, but when I was interviewing her on the set of Queen Sugar, which is this Oprah Winfrey owned network show, it's in its 5th season. Every single episode is directed by a woman, and many of them are women of color. And I was like, Ava, this shows the smashing success. Why are you sharing the love? Like, I was asking her this. I was just curious how she was going to respond. And she was like, Brooke, I go to so many, as a Black woman, she's like, I go to so many of these Hollywood parties, and I don't want to be at the party alone. And so as a result of someone like Ava lifting up women, many of these women haven't had opportunities to, direct TV series like this. And now she's launching them into like network superstardom.
Yeah.
And so for me here at CNN, listen, obviously early on in my career, and I talk about this in my book, sharp elbows everywhere.
Yeah.
Local news, network news. I have lived it. I have experienced it. I make the conscious choice to say F sharp elbows. I make the conscious choice to leave, when people back in the before times, when people would actually be in an office building, I would leave my door open and I would let any woman, anyone, but a lot of women would kind of trickle through. And I can't tell you how many conversations and advice I've given to other women to help them. And I just believe in abundance mentality. I believe in how Megan Rapinoe says, once you have power, throw down your ladders. I've been doing this a long time. I have what I consider a dream job. And hell yeah, I know that many women would elbow me out of my spot in a second and give me a minute. I'll give it to them. But like, I want to have a collective. I want to have a bigger table. I want to help women pull up a seat.
Yeah.
And I actually am maybe a unicorn in that I've always felt that way. And I remember when certain women in my career had sharp elbows, I was like,
I know.
What are you doing?
Shocking. Yeah.
Why can't we share this together? And I have learned, I'm not Pollyanna, but I just believe if I promote the huddle, that energy is around, and other women, it's contagious. Yeah. Huddling is contagious. Being good to other women is contagious. And that's just that's my ethos. Full stop.
It's contagious. And it's like, not because it's a means to an end, but I do believe that when we approach our occupation that way, you end up more successful.
Totally agree.
You really do. I mean, I think that the energy that you put out into the world comes back.
There's a study that backs you up. It's the Harvard Business Review recently said, if women in particular have a network of other women at work, that you are more likely to succeed. You are more likely to have a higher salary if you maintain that work huddle.
Well, I mean, I'm sure you have found this too, but it's like when suddenly women start talking with other professionals about salaries, like when you get that vulnerable with one another.
Yep.
Because so many women are so tight-lipped, but like when you talk, you negotiate better. When I know what, my colleague is making, I can walk into a room, and demand a higher.
Do you share that among your huddle? Do you talk about?
Yes, we fully talk numbers.
See, good for you. Fully. Good for you. It's so taboo. I remember standing in my girlfriend's home a couple of years ago. She was about to go and she's in TV. She was about to go into contract negotiations. And I was like, listen, sister, I'm going to tell you how much I make. I knew it was more. I was almost like embarrassed. Why should I be embarrassed? I've worked my ass off, but I wanted to arm her with knowledge to go in, to have the conversation with her boss, to know she is worth more. Yep. And I actually mentioned that on my show. This was a couple of years ago. And I had other younger women come to me saying, and I don't know how my employer felt about, me doing that, but still I had, especially younger women would come to me and be like, Brooke, thank you so much for saying that out loud, because you know what, now I'm talking to my, some of my colleagues, and I'm realizing that, I'm making $20,000 less than they are. And I'm going to go and do something about it.
Totally. Especially
it's
as
empowering
women, because we're notoriously underpaid. If we're not talking, it's just going to keep happening.
Yep.
That's the only way.
Preach.
Okay. Something that I loved that you talked about in the book, as a therapist, was you talked about the power of shared trauma and huddles that are, built around that. Talk to me about that.
Yeah. I talked specifically, I'm thinking of these two young women who I talked to, Morgan McCall and Amanda Thomas Shaw, who were two of the Larry Nassar survivors, right? Larry Nassar, the USA gymnast, doctor in Michigan, who is now locked up, thank God, for a very long time. Yeah. But they were two of the survivors. And in fact, I wanted to read this for you and for everyone listening and watching, because Amanda said this to me specifically, because all of these women had the courage, despite what happened to them, to stand up in this courtroom and to read these victim impact statements. And so this is why I wanted to talk to Amanda. This is what she said. Larry, the thing you didn't realize when you were sexually assaulting me and all these young girls is that you were building an army of survivors. An army of survivors. And so these women bonded over this shared horrific experience. But as a result, we're able to come together. We're able to have justice prevail, to lock him up. And now, they hold one another accountable, whomever it may be. These women were the specific women I talked to, but just how they said to me, we always show up for one another. So when it comes to various trauma, in this case, sexual assault, they make sure we always call each other back. We go to one another's doctor's appointments. We always check in with one another. And the fact that you are not alone, even though you feel alone in the trauma at the time, you have to have a huddle. Like these girls told me, if you have a huddle, it's just so healing.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, I know that has been true in my own life. And I have seen that to be so true in recovery communities, in survivor communities, that just when we can be vulnerable and group, that bond is really powerful. And I'm not a subscriber to like, everything happens for a reason, and that's why you have these good friends. Like, no, I mean, I don't wish trauma on anyone, but I do think that something redemptive out of that can be really powerful bonds with other people. Yeah. I do a podcast on self-care. How is huddling self-care? How is this a part of self-care? Because I believe that it is.
Huddling is self-care because, actually, let me read Not to geek out on research, but here you go. Harvard nurses study. I just wanted to get this right, so I wrote this down. Harvard nurses study, which is considered the largest and longest running study on health and wellness ever, has found that women who maintain friendships are healthier over their lifetime and less likely to die of specific diseases like cancer. I mean, I was talking to Emily Fawcett. She's a nurse at Lenox Hill in Manhattan. She was in the throes of it during COVID, and she was telling me the story. She has a huddle. She has a huddle, of course, at work among nurses, mostly are women. But she was telling me this story. She was her closest huddle is of her girlfriend since college, and these women were there for her when the worst was happening, when Emily, had to see 5 different people die in a single day. And she called up one of her members of her huddle, and, the girlfriend just like held space for Emily and let her weep. Right. And Emily was saying to me that just even in terms of science and mental health, when you're huddling, it does something like it releases some sort of, chemical in your brain when you're laughing, when you're crying, it lowers your blood pressure. Your heart is healthier. I mean, I'm not a doctor, but that's just what I've read about how it is beneficial to your body.
It absolutely is. It's so interesting. I had read it, maybe it was the same study, but just about, the fact that when you are laughing with friends, your body releases as much dopamine and serotonin as an orgasm.
Yes.
And it's funny because we had 2 weeks ago,
I know, I listened.
We had someone on the show talking about the health benefits of orgasms, which I was like, tell me more.
Yes. More.
But, laughing with friends, I mean, that's such an easy way to monitor.
It's amazing release.
Yeah. Monitor our own surge of the good hormones, the good things.
Which we need right now, especially.
I know. And I do think that, I mean, I do feel that loss in the midst of the pandemic, because I haven't hugged a girlfriend in we've done far away backyard get-togethers, or we've done Zoom calls. But it's really not the same as that in-person, tactile feeling and talking and chatting. And
I know.
I feel that. Yeah. I feel that loss. Yes. Soon enough. We'll get through it. All right. Well, as we close, I wanted to ask you a question we ask everyone, which is, what are 2 things that are saving your life right now, that are saving your self-care right now? This can be, it could be a book, it could be a show, it could be a candle, it could be a practice, it could be something random or something meaningful.
Okay. Easy. Okay. Number 1, meditation. Yeah. I'm 41. I got into meditating a couple of years ago. But if I'm being honest, I haven't been really good at meditation until this last year.
What changed?
It's a great question. I think, honestly, I think probably it was the pandemic. It's like I had enough going on that I would, between work and the news cycle and this book and the pandemic, and just, I'm an empath. I'm just I feel it. I feel it all. And I think, I just needed to figure out how to feel better and to breathe. And I actually, over the fall, I watched Oprah. Of course, it all comes down to Oprah. I watched her on a tour last year, and there was this guy, Jesse Israel, who leads the Big Quiet. And I had connected with him during that tour. And I was like, Jesse, can you please help me, teach me how to meditate? He offers these sessions. And so I took a couple sessions in the fall, and it's something just really clicked for me. And so every single morning, I don't look at my cell phone, don't tell my producers. I get out of bed, I put the dog outside, and then I sit down and I deep breathe for 10 to 20 minutes religiously. If I do not do that, I can tell the difference for the rest of the day. In fact, today I had a bit of a screwy morning, and I was sitting in hair and makeup, and I was like, Nikki, if you don't mind, I'm just going to sit here and deep breathe for about 10 minutes. And she was like, Good. Get it, girl, do what you need to do. And so that really helps me massively. And number 2, I do this thing called the class. It is how would I describe the class? It's a workout. So it's like a high intensity interval training combined with therapy, combined with church. Girlfriend, let me tell you about this.
I need to know more.
So it was a workout class that I would go to 2 or 3 times a week down in Tribeca here in New York City, pre-pandemic. And now it has just, I think, exploded online because they offer these it's the Class Digital Studio. And so it's way more just, inexpensive. I mean, it was one of those sort of bougie Manhattan things that certain people did. And so I did it only like 2 days a week, but now it's really opened, and all you need is a mat and your body and some water. And through these repetitive movements and using your voice. I know it sounds weird, and it's especially weird when you're in the room with the other women who are like moaning and emitting noise. And now I do it all. And my husband's like, okay, she's doing the class right now. But listen, every third time I'm probably sitting on my mat at the very end, like boo-hoo-hooing about something, and I'm just getting it out. Speaking of releases.
Yeah.
I need them.
Oh my gosh.
And this practice has been, even when I had COVID and I was sick in bed, I would turn the class on. So I would feel part of this huddle, this wellness huddle in my life, part of this community. And so I couldn't live without it.
That's really cool. I'm going to have to check that out. I love the hooey communal primal screaming.
It's a little woo-woo, but it's woo-woo with sweat if you're down.
I mean, hey, we all need a little woo-woo, don't we?
Yeah, we do. We do.
Well, Brooke, it was such a pleasure to chat with you. I really enjoyed your book. Where
Kristen,
can people find you online?
Let's see. You can go to my Instagram, just at Brooke_Baldwin. And I've got a link there and you can find the book. Basically the book, so you can pre-order it. It's available everywhere. I'm really trying to give an extra shout out to the indie bookstores around the country who've just been slaughtered in the pandemic.
Absolutely.
So shout out to McNally Jackson in New York City. If you want a signed copy, just hit up my Instagram and you can find it there. But of course, Amazon, Target, Barnes & Noble, all those places you can find it as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Kristen, thank you so much.